My name is Margaret Taylor. I'm 60 years old. And for most of those years, I believed that love, real love, was selfless. Silent. That it looked like warm meals at midnight, the last slice given away, or staying up late to help with homework when your eyes could barely stay open. That's how I loved my daughter, Emily. Quietly. Completely. When my husband passed, I thought the hardest chapter of my life was closing. But I was wrong. The hardest part wasn't burying a man I'd loved for 35 years. It was realizing that the only person I had left, the daughter I gave everything to, could look me in the eye and say, "I want independence, Mom. Don't tie me down with your kindness." But let me start at the beginning, before the silence. Before the boxes. It all started on a Sunday, one of those bright, deceitful Sundays in spring, where the world looks so full of hope you forget how cruel it can be. Emily came over for dinner. She brought lemon tarts and that look in her eyes she always wore when she had something to ask. "Mom," she said, sitting across the table, "I found a house." My fork paused mid-air. "A house?" She nodded, excitement bursting from her like steam from a kettle. "It's perfect. 3 bedrooms, big backyard, even has one of those little in-law suites. You know, like we talked about." Yes, we'd talked. Over the years, we'd shared whispered dreams over coffee. She wanted a home for her future family. I wanted a place to grow old, surrounded by those I loved. But talk is easy. Buying a house in today's market? Not so much. She reached into her purse and pulled out papers, listings, numbers, mortgage rates. "I have some savings," she said, eyes avoiding mine. "But it's not enough. I need help with the down payment." "I hate asking." I didn't let her finish. I already knew what I'd say. "I'll sell the house," I said softly. She blinked, stunned. "Mom." "I don't need it anymore," I continued. "It's too big. Too empty. This way, we'll both have something new. Something together." She stood and wrapped her arms around me, whispering, "Thank you. I swear, you won't regret this." But I did. It took 2 months to sell the house. 35 years of memories boxed and buried in the back of my mind. The kitchen where we'd made pancakes. The hallway where her father used to hum while polishing his shoes. Gone. Sold for a future I thought we'd share. When we signed the final papers on the new house, she was glowing. The realtor handed her the keys, and I remember thinking, she looks just like she did at 6 years old when I gave her a puppy, overwhelmed with joy and a little scared. We moved in together that June. I took the in-law suite, a cozy little space behind the main house. It had a private entrance, its own kitchenette, and a garden view. Emily told me she'd make it beautiful. "Give me 2 weeks," she said, "and it'll feel like yours." But 2 weeks became 3. Then 4. Boxes sat unopened. Shelves remained bare. And when I asked if she wanted help painting or decorating, she smiled, tight-lipped, and said, "It's fine, Mom. Let me handle it. I want you to just relax for once." So I waited. And while I waited, I watched the house become hers. She picked out furniture I'd never choose. Threw dinner parties I wasn't invited to. I was there, yes, but not with her. I began to feel like a tenant, not a mother. One evening, I walked into the main house to find her talking with a contractor. They were discussing remodeling options. "Maybe knock down the wall between the kitchen and the dining room," she said. "Open up the space. Make it feel more modern." The contractor nodded, taking notes. "You're the owner, so it's your call." "Wait," I interrupted. "The owner?" Emily looked at me. Then looked away. The next day, when she left for work, I went into her office. I shouldn't have, but my gut wouldn't let me rest. I found the deed in the top drawer. Her name was there. Only hers. Not mine. Not even in tiny print. I sat on the floor with the document in my lap, staring at it until the words blurred. My chest tightened. My lips trembled. The walls felt too close. I'd given her everything. My home. My savings. My future. And in return, I was a footnote. That night, I asked her. I had to. Emily, I began, voice barely above a whisper. Why isn't my name on the deed? She paused, wine glass halfway to her lips. I didn't think it mattered. Mattered? My voice cracked. It was my money. I thought we were doing this together. She sighed, as if exhausted by the weight of my love. I want to do this on my own, Mom. You're here, aren't you? What difference does it make whose name is on a piece of paper? It made all the difference. Because in that moment, I realized, this wasn't our home. It never was. It was hers. And I was simply passing through. She didn't yell. She didn't storm out. She just dismissed me. Like I was being emotional. Dramatic. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and counted every sacrifice I'd made since the day she was born. The shoes I didn't buy so she could go on her school field trip. The night shifts. The second job. The dinner skipped. The dreams shelved. And I asked myself the question no mother ever wants to ask. Does she even see me anymore? The next few weeks passed like slow water. Tense silences. Hollow smiles. Emily stopped coming down to the in-law suite. Stopped checking in. I tried to act normal, offered to mow the lawn, asked if she wanted me to cook, but everything was met with the same polite rejection. No thanks, Mom. I've got it. One Saturday, I heard laughter from the main house, loud and carefree. I stepped outside and saw a small gathering in the backyard. Music. Drinks. People I didn't know. I wasn't invited. I stood there, watching them through the screen door. And for a moment, I felt like a stranger in the house I had paid for. I turned back inside before anyone noticed me. Later that evening, when I asked her about the party, she shrugged. It was just a thing with some friends, she said, brushing past me. Didn't think you'd want to be around all that noise. Noise. That's what I'd become. Not a presence. Not a part of the home. Just background static she could mute whenever she wanted. But still, I stayed. Because that's what mothers do, right? We stay. We bend. We forgive. Until one day, we break. It was a Tuesday. She came down to the in-law suite, the first time in weeks, with her arms folded tightly across her chest. We need to talk, she said. My heart sank. She sat across from me, carefully, like she was trying not to wrinkle her blouse. I've been thinking, she began, this arrangement, it's not working anymore. I stared at her, unsure what she meant. I need space, she said. Real space. I think it would be better if you found somewhere else to stay. Just for a while. I blinked. You want me to move out? She hesitated, then nodded. You deserve your own place. Somewhere peaceful. And I need to live my own life without constantly feeling like I'm being watched or managed. I wasn't watching her. I was waiting for her. Waiting for her to come back to the girl who used to hold my hand and beg me not to let go. But now she was letting go. Without looking back. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. Not in front of her. I just nodded. All right. 2 days later, I packed my things. 2 suitcases. A photo album. My wedding ring. And the one casserole dish that had belonged to my mother. No goodbyes. No hug. Just a cold silence and a closed door. As I closed the latch on my suitcase, I looked around the tiny in-law suite one last time. The garden outside the window still bloomed. The sun still lit the countertop. But it was no longer mine. It never had been. I found a small apartment 3 blocks from an old diner where I used to meet friends after church. It wasn't much, just a kitchenette, a bed that squeaked, and a view of a brick wall. But it was quiet. It was mine. On my first night there, I sat on the edge of the bed, key in my hand, and I whispered to myself. At least this time. I know I'm on the lease. It wasn't bitterness. It wasn't revenge. It was a quiet acceptance that sometimes, the people we love the most are the ones who teach us how to let go. I didn't call her. I didn't ask for explanations. I didn't chase after a place in her life. Because love, real love, is not just about giving everything. It's also knowing when to stop giving yourself away. They say the hardest part of grief isn't the loss itself, it's the waking up the next day. The slow, cruel realization that life goes on, without the thing you thought you couldn't live without. That's what it felt like. Except I hadn't lost my daughter to death. I had lost her to something far more brutal, choice. She had chosen not to see me anymore. Not really. I spent my first week in the new apartment arranging and rearranging furniture I didn't care about. Folding clothes into drawers that still smelled of someone else. I bought a small cactus, the only thing I could afford that didn't require much care. The quiet was a strange kind of loud. It pressed on my ears, throbbed in my chest. I kept expecting to hear her voice, a knock on the door, a laugh. But nothing came. Just me. And the echo of all I had given. Sometimes I'd find myself dialing her number out of habit, only to stop at the last second. What would I even say? Hi, honey. Just calling from the apartment I moved into because you told me I was suffocating you. No. Silence was safer. One day, about a month in, I walked past a local community board and saw a flyer. Community garden volunteers needed. No experience necessary. I stood there staring at it for almost 10 minutes. I hadn't touched soil in years. But something about it, the idea of helping something grow again, pulled me in. The next morning, I showed up. There were others, retired folks like me, a few teens doing service hours, and a woman named Carla who coordinated everything. Carla had silver streaks in her hair and dirt always under her nails. She handed me a pair of gloves and said, "Don't worry. Plants don't judge." I laughed. For the first time in weeks. We spent the afternoon planting marigolds and tomatoes. And as I knelt in that warm soil, something shifted in me. For years I had bent myself into shapes for Emily. Shapes of convenience. Shapes of sacrifice. Shapes of silence. But in that garden, I didn't have to fit into anyone's idea of who I was supposed to be. I just had to dig. And breathe. And let the sun do the rest. That evening, Carla and I shared lemonade on a bench. She asked where I lived, if I had kids. I hesitated before answering. "I have a daughter," I said finally. "We used to be close." She didn't push. Just nodded. "Sometimes," she said, "it's the people we raise that teach us how to stand alone." Those words followed me home. They sat with me through dinner. Slept beside me in the dark. I realized I'd been waiting for Emily to call. Apologize. Show up. Something. But maybe that wasn't coming. Maybe it never was. 2 weeks later, I ran into an old friend from church at the supermarket. Her name was Linda. She used to sit beside me during Sunday service, whispering jokes about the pastor's socks. She hugged me tight and asked where I'd been. I told her everything, or most of it. Enough to see her eyes widen. "Oh, Margaret," she said. "You moved out of your own daughter's house?" I nodded. "But you paid for it." "I know." She paused, then leaned in. "You could fight that, you know. Legally. Get your name on the deed. Or ask for your money back. I smiled gently. I don't want the house, I said. I just wanted my daughter. And that's when I realized, this wasn't about justice. It wasn't about money. It was about grief. Grieving someone who was still alive. That night, I opened the photo album I'd brought with me. Page after page of Emily growing up, in Halloween costumes, holding trophies, napping on the couch with her father. I touched the edge of one photo, her 5th grade school picture, and whispered. Do you remember me? The way I used to remember you? The next morning, I got an unexpected call. Emily. I stared at the screen, heartbeat roaring in my ears. Should I answer? Of course I did. Hi, Mom, she said, casually, like nothing had happened. Emily, I said, voice dry. I was wondering if you could babysit on Saturday. Just for a few hours. Jake and I have a thing. I blinked. Babysit? Yeah. I mean, I know you're probably free, right? There was no apology. No acknowledgement. Just convenience. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry, Emily, I said. I can't. Silence. You can't? I've started volunteering. Saturdays are busy. Oh. Okay, then. I guess I'll figure something else out. And just like that, she hung up. I sat there in the stillness afterward. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would. In fact, it felt like reclaiming something. I was no longer her emergency plan. Her background character. Her live-in safety net. I was Margaret Taylor again. A woman with dirt under her fingernails and a cactus that hadn't died yet. A woman who had lost everything, and was slowly learning that maybe, just maybe, she still had herself. The first time I laughed, really laughed, after it all, I was sitting on the floor of my apartment, trying to assemble a second-hand bookshelf with instructions written entirely in Swedish. Every screw was in the wrong place. The wood wobbled like a newborn deer. And just as I was about to give up, a screw shot across the room like a bullet, ricocheted off the radiator, and hit me square on the forehead. I started laughing so hard, I cried. And somewhere in the middle of that mess, surrounded by unassembled furniture and silent walls, I realized, this room didn't have to be perfect. It just had to be mine. It was a small thing. But it meant everything. A few days later, I met Frank. He lived down the hall. Retired mechanic. Widowed. Wore the same navy flannel nearly every day and always carried a paperback mystery novel tucked under his arm like a trusted dog. He found me struggling to carry a box of pots up the stairs. You planning to open a restaurant? He asked with a grin. Just planning to cook something that doesn't come frozen, I replied. He offered to help. I declined. He helped anyway. That's how our friendship began, over a box of dusty kitchenware and 2 mugs of too strong coffee. Frank wasn't the talkative kind, but he listened. Really listened. And I didn't realize how much I needed that. We started having dinner once a week. Nothing fancy, just 2 people who had both been left behind by life, finding comfort in the clatter of cutlery and quiet conversation. One evening, after washing dishes, I told him about Emily. All of it. The house. The money. The dismissal. He didn't say much. Just sat there, nodding slowly. Then he poured me another cup of coffee and said something I'll never forget. Some people use others like ladders. They'll climb up as far as they can, then kick the rungs away so no one else can follow. I blinked. Are you saying my daughter used me? I'm saying you were the foundation for her rise. And she forgot the ground she was standing on. Those words hit me hard. Because deep down, I'd known it. But hearing it out loud, gave it shape. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry. I was simply done. Done apologizing for existing. Done shrinking so someone else could grow. Done waiting for a phone call that would only come when it was convenient for her. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I painted. Years ago, before marriage, before motherhood, I used to paint small canvases. Mostly landscapes. Quiet places I wished I could live in. I had stopped when Emily was born, told myself it was selfish to waste time on hobbies when there were diapers to change and bills to pay. But now? Now I had nothing but time. And walls of my own to fill. I painted a small garden, overgrown and wild, but full of color. I hung it above my bed. Not because it was good, it wasn't, but because I had made it. And that made it beautiful to me. One weekend, Frank invited me to his church for a community gathering. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to go, but because I didn't know how to be seen anymore. Who was I now, without Emily? But Frank just smiled and said, "You're you. And that's enough." So I went. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I introduced myself without following it up with, "I'm Emily's mom." I was Margaret. A woman who survived heartbreak and still chose gentleness. A woman who gave everything and lost it all, but found a way to plant again. At the gathering, I spoke with other mothers. And slowly, I learned that I wasn't alone. One woman told me her son hadn't spoken to her in 6 years. Another said her daughter only called when her rent was due. "I used to cry about it," she said, sipping lemonade. "Now? I water my plants and go dancing on Fridays." I laughed. Maybe I'd dance again, too. That evening, I sat on my little balcony, watching the city lights blink like sleepy eyes. And I thought about the house. Not the one Emily owned. But the one I'd lived in for years. The home I built from scratch with my husband. The hallway where Emily took her first steps. The kitchen where I burned Thanksgiving turkey, twice. I missed that house. Not because it was big or beautiful. But because it had my name on the mailbox. My name on the key. And that's what I realized, sipping tea under the dim glow of the street lamp. This room, this life, however small, however quiet, was mine. No one could ask me to leave. No one could remove my name. Because I belonged here. Not as a guest. But as the owner of my own story. It was a Sunday morning when I passed by the bakery near the garden and saw a familiar little face smudged against the glass. My granddaughter, Ava. She looked up, eyes wide, holding a sticky cinnamon bun like it was treasure. And behind her, Emily. Laughing. Alive. Whole. As if nothing had fractured between us. I stood there, frozen on the sidewalk, heart pounding. For a split second, I imagined pushing open that door, calling out her name, asking to join them. But I didn't. Instead, I watched from the outside. A mother. Watching her daughter. A grandmother. Unknown to the child. A ghost, of sacrifice, of silence, of everything unspoken. And I walked away. I don't know if they saw me. I don't think it would have mattered if they had. That night, Frank came over with a bag of popcorn and 2 rented movies, both terrible, which made them perfect. He noticed something was off. "Ran into Emily," I said quietly. "Well, not really. Saw her. She didn't see me." He waited, then asked the one question I hadn't even dared to say out loud. "Do you want her to?" I didn't answer right away. I stared at the flickering TV screen and thought about it, really thought about it. Did I want her to see me? Did I want her to call and apologize? Did I want her to finally realize what she'd done? Maybe. But not because I needed her to make it right. Because I wanted to know that I mattered. That the years I gave her weren't invisible. That the love I poured out hadn't evaporated into nothing. But the truth? I don't need her to see me anymore. I've learned to see myself. A few weeks later, I was invited to speak at a small local event. The community center was holding a storytelling night, and Carla had signed me up behind my back. It's time, she said. Tell them something that matters. So I did. I stood in front of 30 strangers and told the story of a woman who gave everything to her child, her money, her home, her dreams, only to realize she'd given away so much of herself that there was nothing left to stand on. Until she decided to stop giving. Until she chose to plant her own garden. To paint her own wall. To lock her own door. When I finished, no one clapped right away. Just silence. The kind that hums in your ears and vibrates in your chest. Then one woman, maybe 30, maybe 35, stood up and whispered, "Thank you." After that, the clapping came. The tears. The hugs from strangers who saw themselves in my story. I walked home that night with a spring in my step. Not because I'd won anything. But because I had finally come home to myself. Weeks later, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address, but I knew the handwriting. Emily's. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. It was a page of memories, birthday parties, beach trips, a note about the time I waited in the rain for 3 hours outside her dance recital when she forgot to tell me it had been cancelled. At the end, she wrote, "I don't know how to undo what I did. I don't know if you'll ever forgive me. But I want you to know. I remember. I remember it all." I placed the letter in the back of my photo album. Not framed. Not celebrated. Just kept. Because remembering isn't the same as reconciling. Sometimes, the best closure is not an open door, but the choice to stop knocking. Last week, I finally changed the nameplate outside my apartment. Margaret Taylor. Not Emily's mom. Not former homeowner. Just me. I even bought a small ceramic sign that hangs next to it. It reads, "This space is owned by the woman who built it, one broken piece at a time." Sometimes people knock, neighbors, old friends, the mailman. And when I answer, it's because I want to. Not because I feel I owe it to anyone. Not because I'm waiting to be seen. Because I am seen, by the only person who really needed to do it. Me. And that's enough.